Debt Management Office is warning against more borrowing, saying we might just be getting out of the threshold in comparison to Nigeria's GDP. Nigerian Governor's Vice President Kashim Shettima today met with American billionaire and philanthropist Mr. Bill Gates, seeking collaboration and help on public health in Nigeria. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimbalo in Abuja. So much to talk about and so much reporting and update we shall be bringing to you right here on the program. So stick around with me with a 60-minute drive, and I hope that it won't be as bumpy as, it won't be any bumpy anyway. So we get right into it, everyone. And let's bring you up to speed with what is happening in France with Nigeria's #1 citizen, President Bola Tinubu. The president has landed at the venue of the Paris summit, where he will be meeting with world leaders and discussing furtherance of development due to COVID-19 pandemic impact. Of course, the special advisor to the president on communications and strategy, Mr. Dele Alake, has been speaking on expectations at that summit.
The president wants to network with international finance corporations, institutions, countries that are well-heeled, that would facilitate or that could facilitate direct foreign investment into Nigeria. Don't forget that Mr. President has taken some very bold steps in the area of economy, in the area of social engineering in the last 3 weeks. Mr. President's policies in the last 3 weeks really have encouraged these foreign nations and investors to become more interested in the affairs of Nigeria, in shoring up the economy of Nigeria. So a lot of them are quite interested. So many of them have even indicated interest to meet with Mr. President in this trip. Just upstairs now, we were, having a meeting with the president on, structuring some of these meetings with heads of states. At the last count, about 3-4 different heads of states of developed countries have indicated willingness to meet with him, have a chat with him, and explore areas of cooperation on the economy, on agriculture, on other areas that are salient to the development of Nigeria's economy.
That's Dele Alake, President Tinubu's special advisor on special duties, communications and strategy, speaking from France, where the president is away. He's expected to be back in the country on Saturday, but of course we know that there's been some side meetings that have been going on. The president has met also with the president of the Afro-Exim Bank and some other very key financial stakeholders, heads of financial institutions, global financial institutions, bring you up to speed right here on Channels Television about those activities. Well, when the Debt Management Office is warning the federal government about borrowing threshold, how much we can go and how far we can go in terms of what we can borrow, it calls for caution, isn't it? And we'll be bringing you a breakdown of what it is, where we are at, how much of debt burden that the Buhari government has left, that the Tinubu government has inherited, the warnings of the DMO. They've also always said that we're just within the limit, but they have now come out to warn that we are going to be in trouble if we get to a certain level because of the rate of our revenue is not matching up with the speed of and the rate of our borrowings. Then the trouble is looming. That one is coming. We'll be getting perspectives on that. Of course, Mr. Bill Gates is in Nigeria. He's been in Nigeria and he's met with the vice president alongside some state governors. And there's one thing that they have been praying for, and begging Mr. Bill Gates for. We'll be hearing details of that after we check out your political roundup stories.
The Acting Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kayode Egbetokun, is asking officers and men of the force to remain professional and live above board in the discharge of their professional duties. He made the statement while decorating some senior police officers, including former police spokesperson Mr. Frank Mba and former police commissioner in charge of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Bala Chiroma, who were promoted to Deputy Inspector General of Police positions. Mr. Egbetokun says there is a need for police officers to ensure the maintenance of security at all times. The Taraba State Governor, Mr. Agbukefa, says his administration will introduce reforms that will lead to the transformation of all sectors of the state's economy to make it competitive with other states in the federation. This follows his discovery of dilapidated facilities, poor enumeration and working environment when he paid an unscheduled visit to the State Secretariat, Specialist Hospital and School of Nursing and Midwifery in Jalingo, the state capital.
You can see that almost all the offices, the staffs are there. They are willing to work, but they need a drive, a direction.
President Bola Tinubu has been called upon to prioritize the inclusion of persons with disabilities in his appointments in order to foster an all-inclusive and representative government. This demand was made during a stakeholder strategic roundtable on disability inclusion organized by the Chief Executive Officer of the Albino Foundation, Mr. Jake Epele, in Abuja. In a bid to ensure improved welfare for all Nigerians, the Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, is calling on all elected political office holders to take steps to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. At the inauguration of the peer review mechanism committees on sustainable development goals implementation by presidents, governors, and other elected leaders, the national chairman of IPAC, Mr. Yaba Gisani, says party leaders have a crucial role to play in the implementation of the SDGs. And a civil society group under the aegis of Sincere Concerned Organization has given Governor Hope Uzodimma of Imo State a 1-month ultimatum to fully implement the white paper report on the Commission of Inquiry on Contract Awards, alleged looting of Imo assets, and recovery of stolen property worth 130 billion naira during the tenure of former Governor of Imo State, Mr. Rochas Okorocha. At a press conference in Owerri, the Imo State capital, the representative of the Director General of the group, Mr. Destiny Nzenwa, says it is unfortunate that those that allegedly looted the assets and money of the state are still walking free and even planning to return to power by proxy.
If, after the expiration of the ultimatum, Okorocha has not refunded the money or he is not in jail, we shall take all lawful steps to ensure that justice is served.
Thank you so much, everyone. INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, says that it has held a meeting today of the commission, and it has decided to begin a review of the general elections of 2023. This is what they call a usual practice since the general election of 2011. A commission says the post-mortem for the election will involve political parties and within INEC, and of course, stakeholders, civil society organization, to look at what went wrong and what can be corrected. He said at the state levels, the internal review will involve the commission's regular and ad hoc staff, including regs, the 774 electoral officers, heads of departments, administrative secretaries, as well as some presiding officers, collation returning officers will be included. He said the external engagement will involve critical stakeholders such as political parties, security agencies, election observers, the media, and service providers such as transporters that facilitated the movement of personnel and materials for the election. All right, then, let's tell you that the presidency has come out to deny any plan or any action in respect of a review of the salaries of politicians. The presidency, in a statement released and signed by Mr. Dele Alake, says there hasn't been any form of increment or approval for President Bola Tinubu. The presidency says, and I quote, We state without any equivocation that President Bola Tinubu has not approved any salary increase and no such proposal has been brought before him for consideration. End of quote. Well then, let's tell you that today, American billionaire philanthropist Mr. Bill Gates met with the Vice President Kashim Shettima alongside several state governors, and their focus is being on health financing and the public health in Nigeria. There's been a lot of issues in relation to polio and other diseases, and they're looking on how to tackle and beat down these diseases and some other health challenges that most Nigerians are facing in several parts of the country. And so the Vice President has a few things to say in respect of the support of Mr. Bill Gates in the past and what they're looking for in the present. Take a listen to the Vice President, Kashim Shettima.
We have come this far because of these collaborative advocacies and utilization of our combined resources. And I assure you that we are going to utilize the National Economic Council, to which I and each of the 36 state governors belong, to adhere to the Abuja commitments. These commitments are built on the promises to achieve a polio-free Nigeria, strengthen routine immunization, and improve primary health care under the Council's supervision. As partners, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are also going to ensure compliance with the Seattle Declaration, which demands our governors prioritize primary health care, guaranteeing a nation where no child suffers, where no family is unable to access health care, and where every community thrives in a place of wellness and prosperity.
The state governors also had a few things to say in respect of public health funding in Nigeria. Take a listen to them.
I want to encourage my colleagues, especially new government that are coming in, to be very serious, because whatever we are doing is knowledge-based. It's not for us to be praised. Even the award that you have given me and my counterpart is just serving as an impetus for us. But certainly we have benefited so much. The numbers are there. We have really addressed our human capital gaps in terms of getting the required human capital to serve our primary healthcare system.
We need your support for smallholder farmers to improve their yield, have access to markets and income, improve nutrition of their children, and hope and aspirations to life of dignity. We need your support in creating a center of excellence in Maiduguri, based in Borno State College of Agriculture, for training of extension workers in modern agriculture value chain, as you did in Brazil.
In Ebonyi State, we need help. We want you people to come and give us part of these services that you have been rendering to others, so that we will participate fully, especially in our rural areas. Secondly, on agriculture, we all know that in Ebonyi State, we are predominantly subsistence farmers, and we need to improve on that level.
You had the governors there at that meeting. Basically, they are seeking help on how to tackle some of the major health disease in the country. But today, there is a rather worrying scenario playing out, and this is based on the debt profile of the country. And the Debt Management Office has come out to give a warning, and the warning is about the threshold of our debt to GDP. And they are now warning that based on the lack of progress or speed in achieving the kind of revenue that Nigeria needs to achieve, there needs to be a caution on the rate of borrowing in the country. So in the report that was released by the Debt Management Office, they're warning the federal government, citing that 73.5% of this year's revenue will be used to service debt. According to the DMO, this high debt service to revenue ratio is unsustainable and poses a threat to debt sustainability. They suggested that raising the projected revenue of the federal government from 10.49 trillion to about 15.5 trillion would be the way to go to be able to sustain that ratio. They have made some recommendations to the federal government in respect of the present state of our debt, some of which you're seeing right here on the screen, the total debt burden of the country. And in fact, whatever state you come from in Nigeria, as of December 2022, you will see the debt burden of your state. There are the subnational debt burden and the total debt burden of the country, state and federal government altogether. Let's get some perspectives to these health funding, the debt burden, and a lot of issues that Nigeria, this warning is coming. Don't forget that there was a time that the government says, look, we might be borrowing, yes, but there isn't any problem because our debt servicing to GDP ratio is still at the normal level. We have not crossed the threshold. The DMO is saying, look, except if we shift our revenue to about 15.5 trillion, that is a comfortable threshold that we can be. But if it's at that 10.49 trillion projection, we might be in trouble. I'm not an economist, and I don't know much about numbers. Let me bring in someone who has a very good understanding of these issues. I'm being joined by an economist, Mr. Takwe Fasua, a former presidential candidate. Thank you so much, Mr. Fasua, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sean.
I appreciate it.
Me. Yeah.
How does it come to you? We'll get to Bill Gates' trip to Nigeria and the request of the state governors, the subnational. They are seeking help. The vice president is talking about how we can find health situation. Don't forget that health and education funding in Nigeria is abysmal. The funding is terribly low. And there are those who have said, if you need to develop as a people, you need to heavily fund education and health.
Absolutely.
The livelihoods and the welfare of the people is important to productivity.
Absolutely.
But let's put that aside for a moment. We'll get there. But let's look at the one coming from the Debt Management Office. Mr. Fasua, from we are okay to we are not okay.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. So the point is that it's a bit intriguing, if I might use that word, that a DMO that would usually support government, on our way to where we are today, and they will tell you, the emphasis on debt to GDP and all of that is suddenly changing tack. But perhaps it's strategic because I understand that they just released the report and maybe they're trying to hedge their position by quickly telling the government the worst case scenario. But if you read what they've put out, for me, honestly, I must tell you, in times past, I used to think that the debt scenario was really, really unsustainable. But I went back and studied history, the history of debts. And I think I put out some articles in that respect. And, I found out that, look, we could still do a lot more. The DMO is warning that the debt level has become 37.1% of GDP, and Nigeria set for itself 40%, benchmark to say we shouldn't cross 40%. If you look around Africa alone, you will see that other countries have been able to leverage their balance sheet. You see, so the balance sheet of a country is as good as the balance sheet of a company. And when you look at those two, a serious-minded company will look at its balance sheet and say, hey, do I have a good balance sheet? Am I bankable? So it's about bankability, okay? So first of all, let's put aside the discussion on revenue to GDP or revenue or debt servicing, for example. Debt servicing to revenue ratio or debt to revenue ratio. That's a good discussion to say, of course, we know that you service your debt using your revenue. That's given, okay? So we have a mandate to drive revenue. And DMO has said that we have to look at driving revenue from 10 trillion to 15.5 trillion. For me, I'd say that, look, you cannot allow your past to define your future. We've had an abysmal run thus far. I believe that the gentleman that is there now, President Bola Tinubu, if you see the way he has hit the ground running, in fact, has surprised almost everybody. And therefore, I think that he's thinking beyond 15 trillion. I think that if you give, in a good year in this country, we should be looking at 20 trillion, 25, 30 trillion of revenue. And those areas are there. So, but back to the issue, I'll let you know. But back to the issue of debt, when you have this debt to GDP ratio, it's a valid ratio. And what countries do with it is that they use it to leverage their balance sheet. Like I said before, you can't run a company and your balance sheet is looking bankable, but you refuse to go to the bank and say, you know what? It's because you're not doing any new project. So, like you said, we have a problem with education. We have a problem with health. I mean, look at the state governors begging Mr. Bill Gates, come and help us. Our people are in the bush. You have to help yourself at the end of the day. You have to develop your human capital. You have to develop infrastructure. And in fact, you know what? Sometimes you may even need to borrow money in order to drive your revenue. So whatever you need to do. So now, the focus is not on borrowing money. The new government is not coming out to say, oh, we want to just, look at what happened with the last government. They leaned on the central bank. And before you knew it, the central bank had given out 23.7 trillion. From its 790 billion position when Goodluck Jonathan left, we took it to 23.7 trillion. And
Governor Godwin Obaseki had said about twice that the CBN was printing money.
Indeed. The truth was that the CBN, give or take, I'm not their spokesman, had no choice but to print money because the government had no idea how to grow revenue.
So Governor Obaseki was right at the time.
Every time you will hear the former Minister of Finance say, we have a revenue problem. What are you doing about it? She did try. There was a time that she put a certain tax line in the Finance Act of 2022, but the Minister for Communication shut it down in public to say that, look, that's not going to happen. You can't put any more taxes. In telecommunications, they've put so many taxes, I wouldn't allow this one. And the president could not come in to say, you guys, what are you talking about? We need revenue in the country. That was a good tax that they wanted to bring then, though it was going to be on phone calls and text and so 5%, which most people will not feel. But they shut it down, so they were not serious because they always had the central bank to go and blackmail, to go and say, listen, give up. Otherwise, we would have had for many years, we would not have been able to pay policeman's salary or soldier's salary or even civil servant salary. All of that money was, and of course, they got unlucky, COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, everything was haywire. Before then, from 2016, the mismanagement of the economy had started, more than we were used to before. Of course, people felt Jonathan was incompetent. We felt Yaradua was go slow. We even felt Obasanjo was a bit tepid in terms of the kind of growth we needed. Obasanjo perhaps is still the halcyon days, if you think about it now. But I think that we have a new lease of life here. And the people who are there, you saw them in France. They look like serious-minded people. The president is a deal maker. The man wants to do great things. The kind of numbers, he's not talking about, like I said, don't let your past define your future, all right? The fact that we've been abysmal, we've been suboptimal in the past that we've been mediocre in the past does not mean that we can't do it. So,
and I'd like to ask you,
if I will conclude, let me just conclude in 1 second. The fact is that this Nigerian balance sheet I'm seeing at 37.1% debt to GDP ratio, after adding everything, including the ways and means, comes about $177 billion. That number, that balance sheet can be leveraged. We can raise good money with that balance sheet and do great development in this country.
Indeed. So, it will take a lot of creativity, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So when the government,
people.
when the government says we have a revenue problem, now the DMO has come back, and I've had several conversations on this program to talking to people who understand policy and who understand finance and government accounting on how we have a major problem, but how do we get out of it? It needs a lot of creativity. We've removed subsidy. There is inflation in the land is gotten as bad. It couldn't have been worse than it's been in the last 15 years. It's astronomical. But where do we go from here? You seem to have seen a crystal ball. Absolutely. What does your crystal ball tell you? Where is the money? Where are you seeing the money? You've talked about almost 30 trillion. Where are we going to get that from?
So I've been reading a lot about what's going on in the maritime sector alone in this country. The customs, you know, the Abiru committee actually recommended that the custom be fused with IFRS like it is done in the UK and so on, HMRC and so on. You know, so within custom alone, we're losing a lot of money. NIMASA, MPA, not to talk of, you know, the aviation sector as well. There's so many leakages. Do you know that in this country, less than 20% of registered companies, you know, take payee from their staff or even remit. That means you have 80% to go for. Less than 15% of registered companies actually pay taxes. Those who pay taxes are those who have to, maybe because they're looking for government contract. You have a smorgasbord, okay, a raft of ideas to pursue on company income taxes, on petroleum profit taxes. Look at the petroleum sector. Now, all of a sudden, thankfully, we went back to being the biggest producer in Africa in the month of May. You know, in April, we dropped down to second to Angola. Now we're back to 1.3 million, in the month of May, 1.3 million. If we can capacitate that sector, and the new president is an oil man, he has said that, listen, I'm ready to do deals with these guys. If I'm taking 60% before, I can take 40%. He said, if I get the money out, I can do what they call deferred profit. I can raise money based on my deferred profit that I haven't actually made, but based on the deals that I've done. Look, it's about creativity. Running a country and developing a country is about creativity. It's not about, you know, if it's just about resuming to work, you know, carrying files up and down and paying salaries for those who are not working, and at the end of the day, you rue your fate, you know. But there's so many places we can, look, FRS, and I've had some discussions with them before, you can take, they did the best numbers last year, 10.1 trillion in FRS.
Alone? That's yes, one agency of government alone?
Yeah, well, of course, that is where you kind of agglomerate most of it. But there are many GOEs, government-owned enterprises, and you can see what Tinubu has done. Being one fell swoop, wrote one memo and said, take all those guys out. Buhari could not sack even the people that were appointed by PDP in 2015. But Bola Tinubu has said, look, let these guys go and rest. He wants to bring in new blood. So two things. We have the FRS, 10.1 trillion. They target 12 trillion this year. You can challenge them to do 16, 17 trillion. Then you can go out to all those GOEs, those government-owned enterprises who will collect revenue on behalf of the people of this country and spend 95% on themselves.
So I wanted to add to, I mean, your line of thought. Maybe you can expatiate on that. There are those who are suggesting that there are assets of this nation that are moribund. Some of them are not performing, that we could sell.
Well,
I mean, is that a way to go?
Well, I call that Teribanomics, which after my senior brother, Dr. Ayo Teriba, you know, he has been pushing that, and he talks about equity as against debt. So here we are talking about debt, which is what the remit of the DMO is. You know, let's go and raise debt, you know, which are short-term transactions, you know, and stuff like that. So they are talking about you can raise equity, okay, by actually selling off. Two problems. Number one, remember that our people are very, very aware and feisty as well. If you're talking about selling government properties forever, people are going to say, listen, you're selling this, you're selling the family heirloom. What authority do you have to do that? However, what I found out was that in Brazil, that is just in the remit of the NIPC. Nigeria Investment Promotion Council should list alongside the other investment opportunities that they have to say that, look, we have Ajaokuta. Ajaokuta is there, moribund, sitting down. A $100 billion project, a $1 billion project, sitting down there. You can as well settle that up because we can't run it. The model by which countries used to run companies before, like refineries, is gone forever. Especially for us, because we did not build the capacity to be able to run these things on our own. All of our refineries are moribund now because we don't manufacture those equipment. If you went to places like Houston, you will see refineries that have been around for 100 years. We've run ours for 40 years, 50 years, and they are down. Some of them vandalized forever. Though we're waiting until maybe November this year when the NNPC said that Kaduna will be back in operation. But hey, refineries can no longer be run by civil servants in anywhere. It can be. So you can, sell all those refineries, Mr. Fasua, but mind you, you can't just sell anything and everything. Yeah. 4 refineries are not working. Workers are being retained in their hundreds. Honestly, they're paying salaries. They're going to work. That is very easy. I mean, what kind of spin them off? What kind of like I said, civil servants cannot ever run refineries again. Refineries are serious business. See what Dangote has built in Lagos. You can't put civil servants there who probably get there anytime they want to, will probably sabotage some of the equipment because you didn't promote them or send them.
I mean, I've spoken to a minister who said, Mr. Faso, I've spoken to a minister who said in an interview that our refineries are largely destroyed by saboteurs.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
We'll take a break. We'll take a break.
Civil servants do whatever they want.
We'll take a break and we'll look at what Tinubu can do. There are those who believe that Nigerians will have to tighten their belts the more. There are tough times ahead. It's going to take another 6 months of us feeling the pinch, and it's going to get as worse before it start getting better. I'll get your own perspective. I know you don't quite agree with our school of thought, but we'll take a break, everyone. When we come back, we speak with someone who knows so much about public health sector financing and how to run a public health sector in this country. He's been in the private sector, he's been a politician, but what the governors are crying for, seeking help from Mr. Bill Gates. How can we run around this? How can we kill polio in this country? Totally. We'll be getting more perspective. Mr. Faso is still with me. We'll be looking at all of these issues on the table tonight. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. I have two doctors on the program. One is a medical doctor, and one is a doctor of public policy. Dr. Tokwe Faso has been speaking with us on the program. He's an economist and a public policy expert. And I'm being joined by a Senate chairman on public health, former senator from Kwara State, APC member, who joins us virtually from Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much, Senator Ibrahim Oloriegbe. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Chair, for having me.
There is an interesting link. Thank you so much. There is an interesting link between issues of public financing and administration that Mr. Faso has been speaking with us about. But there is another angle to that issue, which is the health sector financing and tackling a very, very disturbing disease like polio that has really disturbed this country. And at some point, people will look at maybe a few states in Nigeria that are still battling that disease. Now, so Mr. Bill Gates was he's in Nigeria, and there are conversations with governors, and the vice president was there, and they're also seeking a collaboration and help from Mr. Bill Gates. Give us an understanding of this kind of collaboration as a yielded result from the point of view of the subnationals, the state governments.
I think you put two things in one. Yes, the support had needed some results, particularly what I would say is the technical aspect, because a country like Nigeria is a what we call middle level. It's not a low-income country per se. I'm sure Faswa will agree to that. But of course, things have deteriorated a little bit in the past few years. So given that, it's only about getting our resources out together and allocating it appropriately. So the support we get from partners has been of help, particularly from technical perspective, from developing good policies, from learning about interventions that work in other countries and applying it to our country, and helping us to be able to put our thought process together. But be that as it may, I may just jump to say that what you are discussing from your introduction to the second part is about what are we allocating to health, both at national and subnational level, particularly at subnational level. What being allocated to health is very, very small. Nigeria committed in 2001 to allocate 15% of budget to health. We've never, ever achieved that. In many of subnational level, it's less than 5%. Even at the national level, it has risen to 6 to 7%. So it means we are not allocating enough, and what we are allocating is not also being used effectively and efficiently. So if we want to get health and achieve universal health coverage, first and foremost, we have to increase our allocation. At subnational level, where the governors are meeting, there's a mechanism that we developed which we call Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. It is to be able to put an additional resources to health, which is 1% of consolidated revenue fund of the federal government and state. Federal government since 2018 has been committed to do that, but particularly from 2020, it has become a statutory transfer, and 1% of the consolidated revenue is allocated for primary health care as a basic health fund. This is in addition to the regular health budget. Unfortunately, at subnational level, it's not been happening like that. Many states are not applying that 1%, and what they are allocating as their budget is also small. And they are using even the 1% that is coming from national as a replacement rather than it being an add-on. They didn't add their own. So this is part of the challenges that we have. So what I want to say is that we require support of partners living our level of population at the poverty level, but we have to do more for ourselves. We must do more by allocating more resources and by using those resources efficiently and effectively to achieve the results we need to achieve.
Now,
what you, Sheila?
Dr. Oluregbe, you
Yes.
sat as the chair of the Senate Committee on Health for 4 years. Now, up until 2016, poliomyelitis has been a major concern, a major headache for Nigeria, for the subnationals. And the vice president has said by the end of 2023, the plan of the federal government is to end polio in Nigeria. Don't forget that by end of 2020, there was a declaration that Nigeria is no longer in danger of endemic polio. But by 2022, there is a strain of polio virus that are taking almost 165 or more people lives in Nigeria, that affected over 165 people. That means there is still some trouble. But what the vice president said today, and the target of the end of 2023, is that feasible?
It's feasible if the right things are done. What we have, let me just correct it, we don't have wild polio virus again. What we have, the 165 or the figures we are quoting, is what we call vaccine-derived polio virus. I mean, which is as a sort of a mutation that happened from vaccine, and it does affect children that are zero dose who has never had vaccination of polio. So it's possible and doable if the right things are done. One is to be able to get the primary healthcare system to function well. Of course, the polio eradication program has been more of a vertical program, but we need to strengthen the system. If we strengthen the system, it means we have health workers that are well trained in every facilities that cover, every community has access to that. We have vaccines easily available. The vaccines must be potent, that is, must be effective. That means we have to maintain the cold chain. And we have to be able to get the vaccines to the children that need them everywhere in the country. One of the challenges we've had with why we have this vaccine derived because of the zero dose is because of the conflict we have. We have to reach the conflict area. Of course, during the polio campaign, the conflict areas were reached using some mechanism, engaging with the stakeholders there. So we need to do more of this. It is possible and feasible in the next 6 months if we strengthen the system and we walk through the system with the experience we've had in the last years. We should be able to achieve the target the vice president has given.
Well, look at the manner in which the governors have approached it. They are seeking help. I mean, is it that bad, public health financing in Nigeria, to the point that we're seeking our help, some kind of handout? Mr. Fasua has spoken to that effect. How much of those kind of funding in the past have been judiciously used?
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as that. I think if we generally improve our revenue sources, then health, education, and other social sector will benefit more from allocation. It's bad because the revenue has been dwindling, and many of the states they go with cap in hand, depending on the federal allocation. They are not looking, just like the first one is saying, once we look at the national level also, we don't look at subnational. Subnationals have to look at the revenue source. They need to look out of the box to generate more revenue to be able to meet their needs in terms of what the services they need to do to their people. Of course, the revenue that will come from the national, which is what they share from federal allocation, based on what the president is doing now, as Fashion has said, I think the president will grow the national revenue. That will increase more allocations to the state. But then, state themselves must think out of the box and look at other sources, how they can generate revenue. Some states have demonstrated this. If I look at what Lagos, a state like Lagos, and some other states have done, but some other states have potential also beyond. Of course, Lagos can grow because of the population, the private sector, and so on. But some of the other states have mining, they have other things, they have agricultural products, which they could look at how to convert this into revenue sources. And once they build their revenue, they will have more to be able to allocate. I must say that we cannot get help from people, a person like we cannot replace our need, or our need cannot be met by partners. Nigeria is a very huge country, and we have a potential. The figure I read, which I read in the media, is about $7 billion over 4 years. If you put that, you divide it into, it's less than 2 billion per annum. What is putting down? You convert it to naira. From my calculation, it's very small if you look at our population and the health needs. So as such, we must increase our own revenue and when we get more money, allocate it appropriately to the sectors that will increase our productivity, which will be health and education.
Senator, and I will be very frank now. I mean, anyone who has money has has a right to use the money in whatever way they want to use it, either for leisure or for tourism or even for medical tourism, as the case may be. But what is very sad is a brain drain that we are experiencing. The fact that a lot of Nigerians don't trust public health system in Nigeria. They do not believe that their lives are safe getting medical help in Nigeria. And what even worsens it is that we have cases in the past where even leaders of the country had to travel out of the country to seek help, medical help. I mean, this is a very disgraceful scenario for a country that is so blessed with very good brains that can deal with these issues. But unfortunately, we've been bedeviled by lack of organization at the very highest level, such that our own cannot be treated at home. They have to be flown abroad to be treated there. Is that bad? How can we stop this? This is an eyesore, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. But I'm privileged to have information that the new government is very much concerned about that issues, and there are plans to be able to turn things around as fast as possible. One is
there. We lost connection with Senator Oluregbe there. We'll get back to him because that is a very important point that a lot of Nigerians are worried about.
We need to retain the brain.
Okay.
You know, to retain the brain means we need to be able to provide them with enabling environment that will make them to stay, to work. Enabling environment in terms of necessary equipment, enabling environment in terms of infrastructure that will enable them to do what they know how to do. But more importantly, they have to be motivated in terms of remuneration as well. And there are issues that are outside the sector, like the security must be taken care of. But specifically with the sector, the plan is to massively improve our infrastructure in the tertiary health cares that we have across the country, to equip them with necessary equipment. That's a plan, to have a special fund that will enable all the tertiary hospitals we have to have necessary equipment for them to function. And to be able to do this, there will be partnership with the private sector. This is part of the plan that the current administration is planning to do. And there will also be a linkage between Nigerians and diaspora and Nigeria who are working here, because the technologies that enable us to do what we call telemedicine, in which case experts can be outside the country, but they could be able to link up with experts within the country to do a lot of work. I think in the next few months, it's one of the medium-term plan of this government. Between the next 1 year, we should be able to see a massive improvement in our health infrastructure, and we will see more retention, because there are plans to also be able to improve on remunerations and not only salary, but some allowances that will enable health workers to stay in the country, and for those that are outside the country to also be able to return or come back to be able to give services either in and out of the country. So these are some of the plans which I'm privileged to have information, and I'm sure, of course, things will happen in the next few months. I
mean, I just wish that your optimism is exactly what will play out in the coming days. Senator Ibrahim.
I'm very optimistic, because health is a very important priority for this current administration. And there are a lot of plans that are already put in place to be able to see how this will happen. Of course, it relates to the president promised that he will increase health sector budget to 10% from the first year. And there are plans also to discuss with the subnationals, as we discussed earlier, that the basic health care provision fund should be made to be what to be charged as first charge to state resources from FAC, so that money goes straight for primary health care. If governors agree to this, if minimum of the 1% or the plan is to go to 2%, we will have massive improvement in primary health care. The current plan is to have 1 functional primary health care per ward. But the plan is that within the first 4 years of this administration, it should increase to 2 per ward to be able to increase not only physical access, but to be able to make more effective healthcare delivery to the people. Because some wards are very big. If you have 1 functional one, it may take more than 10 kilometers for patients to be able to access that. But if you have it to 2 in the next 4 years, it means we have more access and we'll be able to improve on the quality of services that we are giving to the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, you look at the sophistication in healthcare these days and you wonder, there are several cases of misdiagnoses in this country. People get diagnoses in this country, they get abroad. The diagnosis is totally different from what they get. And people are almost dead when they found out that what they diagnosed them of in Nigeria was totally different from what they found out abroad. I'm just hoping that
it relates to infrastructure again. It relates to the availability of necessary equipment, the top class, top level, cutting-edge equipment that are available now. Because the health there's a lot of advancement, given technology, given knowledge, given innovation. The diagnoses are more specific nowadays, and even treatment are also very much more specific, less invasive.
All right.
We have people with knowledge of those ones, but they need to require equipment to be able to get there. And I think, just like I said, I'm optimistic because I'm preview to the plan of the current administration in terms of what to do in health. And I'm sure in the next few months, we're going to see a massive change in the situation of our health sector. Thank you.
I'm just, because I'm a Nigerian, I'm terribly patriotic, I just I'm just optimistic, and I'm hoping that things will get better. Senator Ibrahim Oloregbe, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good night.
Mr. Faswa, I mean, our problems are multifaceted. We talk about health. We talk about public debt profile of the country. So the question is, we went on that break and I was painting a picture of a school of thought that feels, look, we might be having things very tough. The subsidy ripples will hurt the economy for several months, and at least 6 months, the pinch is going to be biting. No. And you don't think so?
No. In fact, just today I pushed out an article where I said, for now we need to wrestle back our president from the fangs of the liberal economists who would want to push that. So we have the subsidy removal. We have the what's the other big thing that's going on now? So
the measure of the exchange rate.
Exchange rate issue, So
the floating of the naira.
And both of them would have an impact on inflation. And if you are not careful, you may have a spiral whereby all these things are feeding themselves like a Frankenstein monster. They're feeding on themselves. And so, we also know that the president is a left of center thinking kind of person. He's a people's person, because at the end of the day, you can't foist all of these ideas on the people and say, you know what, keep suffering a little bit more for 6 months. 6 months is a long period of time to suffer. And so we believe that going forward now, we want to begin to see the incentives, if you like. Don't call it subsidies. The government just has to do its job. There's a growing mentality now in some quarters whereby investment in health, investment in education are being termed as subsidies. They're not subsidies. They're not subsidies. They are government responsibility to invest in health, to invest in education, and all of these areas, because they're investment in human capital. Remember, we've got a big problem, the Japa syndrome. The doctors, everybody is running out of this country. This European, Canada, and all of those guys, they're taking our best brains. Anybody they see, they snatch. They give you whatever. You are going to probably start at the base there. They're never going to make you the DGs of their corporation, hardly, but they take you all the same. Yeah, so we need to start investing in our people. So our work is cut out for us in Nigeria. The government work is cut out for it. We don't even have 6 months of suffering
because if you look at
the government has every opportunity
just a moment. The optimism, as of yesterday, the dollar to the naira closed at about 815 naira.
Well, closed at 763. But there were some trades that went in at 815.
Yeah.
That, you see now, unfortunately, the same advocates of, so-called single rate, which is never going to happen. There's never going to be
We'll never be able to achieve it.
There's never going to be a single rate. Forget it. And there's no single rate anywhere. If you went to the United States, in one single bank, you get different rates. In one bank, officially, your rates you depend on how well you can bargain. If you travel to the UK, go to Travelex. Okay, they can display a rate. If you are smart, you will negotiate that rate. You will get a better rate than what's displayed. There's nothing like a single rate anywhere. But however, we've now been sent on this wild goose chase to be pursuing which one is NAFEX, which one is I&E window, which one is CBN rates, which is a weighted average of how many rates. Come on. So yesterday, what happened was 815 was the highest trade. Yeah. Some amounts were sold at that month. However, there was also a low rate of 476. Somebody bought some money and sold some money at 476. That same yesterday. But the rate closed at 763. Now, but I wish that in time we would get out of this, yo-yo, this rigmarole of juggling rates and all of that. Give us a break. Let's know exactly where we're going.
But the question is that, for those who say, this policy that are coming at the same time.
Exactly.
There is no way that the Tinubu presidency will not be forced in the immediate to look for money. It will have to look for money to fund the economy. Yes. That means unnecessarily, probably, because if he said asset, you may not get the money immediately. The process of selling the asset will take more than 6 months.
Some of the even our crude oil proceeds, which we believe should. For example, we've deregulated the sector now. There's nothing like subsidy again. We're expecting a 6 to 7 trillion inflow, but that will come in monthly, as you said.
So the question is that
daily
between now and the end of the year, the Tinubu presidency, we need money.
There's no problem with that.
There's a possibility, and in fact, in the first quarter of, just remember, in the first quarter of next year, they will probably need some money because next year will open with a bit of difficulty if they don't get an immediate money, a low-hanging fruit. Is that not going to be turning to borrowing again,
so
which the DMO has warned against?
I think what we need to have, first of all, is a positive spirit about all of this thing. And that positivism needs to be sold to Nigerians. The idea that, we're going to be suffering. Look, I think everything starts, prosperity and what have you, starts from the mind. So basically speaking, there's nothing wrong in that borrowing. And I've also advised before, and I write a lot, I don't, anyhow, but that, in terms of our borrowing, we should also look local borrowing, Naira borrowing. In fact, today I was reading about Ricardo Hausman in Harvard, did recommend he said, like, if you always borrow in foreign currency, there'll be a mismatch in your balance sheet that will throw you off course. Let's think about grounding our borrowing locally. Nigerians are taking their money abroad. And then we're going to the same abroad to go and borrow money at floating rate.
But the question is that...
let's do more of local borrowing in Naira among our people and move on from there.
We need to go, and those who will say, for those money that we are paying back, as at yesterday, Nigeria will pay several percentages higher because of the exchange that has gone up.
Exactly. That's for the foreign. That's
an implication
for the foreign currency. That's it.
But from the moment...
We want Kemi Adeosun in 2017-18 against this foreign borrowing, which is now a problem to us. For every money we borrowed at 199 Naira today, if we have to pay back, we have to pay at 7, whatever it is, the closing today.
Because it's
780. You know what I'm saying? So every country, when I studied the history of debts, national debt, every country that is wise started from borrowing local. They deepened their local, and they got the commitment of their people. There were war bonds, there were diaspora bonds, there were all sorts of bonds that they raised locally before going abroad. So it's not just about, when you think borrowing is not about running abroad to go and collect all sorts of crazy loans. And if you want to go abroad, maybe go to the multinationals if you know that they can, multilaterals, or I prefer some Chinese loan as well. I think we see some of the infrastructure they have built on ground. I don't mind that.
I really open and thank you so much.
But the point is that this country is full of opportunity. Our balance sheet can be leveraged if we have projects to do and to help our people to develop our human capital. The future is bright for Nigeria.
Fasua, public policy expert, PhD in public policy. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. It's going to be Friday, and it's going to be a